Hi everyone, Callahan here, and thanks for listening to The Mind Sculptors. If you like the content we create and want to help us keep on making it, head on over to our Patreon page. For just $2 a month, you can help support the channel and get exclusive access to our Discord server. For more information, check out the link in the description. And welcome everybody, and this is The Mind Sculptors. I am your host, Callahan, and we have a really great show lined up for you guys today. I have the absolute honor, honestly, of getting to talk with the one, the only Sheldon Menery from the EDH Rules Committee today. How are you doing today, Sheldon?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I just actually finished, like 10 minutes ago, playing in the Star City Games pre-release for Commander Legends.
How did that go?
We went to time.
Oh no! What did you end up drafting?
It was Steel Deck. We played Steel Deck. They shipped this. They shipped this booster packs last week.
Okay.
And I built. If I had to have any creatures, I had a good deck. Like I was removal central, but I played black green, the wolf that makes your commander's indestructible on Nara.
Oh, okay.
And Kekis, my soul sculptor. So I played black green.
Okay. That sounds
it
fun.
was me, RNDA, who's from R&D, Stephen Green from Star City Games, and Rachel Weeks, special guest from Commander Sphere podcast.
Yeah.
So we just bashed each other for 2 hours and then quit for let the next game play.
That's fun. I didn't get to watch any earlier. I've been out running about today, and I saw Jim was on there and from the Spike Feeders, and I think I had it on in the background while I was trying to edit down on an episode, but I didn't really see too much of what was going on. But that was so cool that they did that for you guys.
Yeah, I caught 5 minutes of Jim, and I caught enough that Jim had actually brought a crown to be the monarch.
I saw that.
Jim has been our emotional support Canadian through these rough times.
It has been quite the year, to say the least. Well, as you brought up, Commander Legends is coming out, and we're recording this a little bit, obviously, based on what we're talking about a week in advance of when this will drop. But Commander Legends comes out in just a few days, and so I get to talk with the godfather of EDH about Commander for a little bit. And one of the questions, we talked about, and I know you've talked about it ad nauseum, of like how the format came about, blah, blah, blah. But one thing I've kind of always wanted to ask you is, when was it that you kind of realized that EDH was beginning to gain a wider audience?
I think there were two pretty significant fulcrum points. The first was obviously when they came to me and said, "Hey, we want to start producing product." Right, that was maybe 2009. When the idea first came up, and I think it was at a pro. I think it was head judging a pro tour, and Scott Larrabee, fellow RC member, came over and said, "Hey, we need to go talk to some folks." And that was the first point. I was like, okay, so they realize this is kind of popular, but it's a niche format. It's gonna do its thing, and we were still at that point the little format that could.
Right.
And the other one that really I think was the awakening point for me was when Scryfall. What did Scryfall used to be? MagicCards.info.
That's right.
When MagicCards.info in the middle of the 2010s, 13, 14 maybe even 2012, put Commander Color Identity as one of the search functions.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I was like, okay, now I think this rocket ship is about to take off.
Well, and it's funny you bring that up because it's like color. I talked about this. I talk about this a lot with people. Is like color identity was something you guys kind of came up with. Like obviously it has like some function in the game,
Mhm.
but it's been built into the rules of Magic now.
Yeah, it was actually the brainchild of Matt Tabak,
Okay.
uh, who's currently serving as the rules manager, who had been the rules manager before. But he was a high level judge back in the day, and we had certainly been good friends for quite a while. And he was somewhat of a fan of the format. Um, and we were working on the issue of some cards making themselves illegal. Like people wanted to play Memnarch as a commander,
Right.
and by the rules at the time, Memnarch invalidated itself. So we sat down with Matt and basically just hammered it out in relative short order. What color identity meant, and it certainly opened a lot of possibilities for things. It also it opened possibilities and it closed off some others. And you know how we feel, right? That restrictions breed creativity,
Right.
and that's what we like about color identity.
Same. I love, honestly, like it's what one of my favorite things. It's funny because right before we went on, I've been sitting here. I will tell you this, Sheldon. Ever since Paradox Engine went away, you killed one of my favorite decks. Um, I am a big fan of Joyra Weatherlight Captain.
Uh-huh.
And it's one of those decks where I've just been. I feel like you've never lived until you've been hellbent with like a few mana rocks out. You top deck a mana vault and then proceed to win the game that turn.
Yeah,
Like that is
okay.
living to me.
Yeah, the problem with Paradox Engine was that it was unintentionally ruining games. Like
Right.
if you knew what you were doing with it, you probably were okay. But
Right.
for the most part, there were players that they didn't necessarily know how to handle it. And then, of course, the fact that it's pretty easy to blank if you've got a grindy Paradox Engine combo.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to blank, and then everybody has sat there for 15 or 20 minutes watching you play. And that, I mean,
Right.
that's not good commander. That's not good Magic.
Right. No, and I've kind of said that to some extent is that Paradox Engine kind of died for the sins of people who don't necessarily know how to play with it. Because like if you really know how to play with it, you can kind of you can't shortcut it, but you can usually get it to a deterministic point. But and like you said, not all the time you can't, but I don't know. There will always be in a part. I don't think you follow me on Twitter. On Twitter, I started a thread of just these memes of me like missing Paradox Engine. I love that card so much. But I'm glad that got to organically come up. I've always wanted to talk about that with you. But so you've got all this stuff going on. WotC came to you, and so that was like in 2009. And so like whenever they do card design or they want to do a rules change, like you and WotC work together on that. How tight of a partnership is that?
I think I've called it a strategic partnership before.
Mm-hmm.
We're very close. We're close enough to have a great working relationship and far enough apart to maintain our independence.
Right.
Right. It's a very tenuous balance sometimes. It's not always 100% in agreement on everything. Right. There have been, especially recently, there have been some conversations where I have used coarse language with people, and that happens.
Right.
But people think that we're really distant, or when somebody says, "Well, WotC should take over the RC," I'm like, do you realize that we're mostly insiders anyway?
Right.
Right. Arguably, Toby and I are the two judges that have had the most impact on Magic. in its history, and Scott has been running the Pro Tour since God knows when.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not the Pro Tour anymore, but he's responsible for that. Gavin was
Whatever
a
it's
net rep
called.
and our regional coordinator. It's like when the net rep and the regional coordinator is the least well known of the people.
Right.
You've got people that are inside already.
Right.
I can't count the number of NDAs that we've signed, or the times that we've been, just been in the building or gotten phone calls.
Right.
Scott and Toby and I are really close friends as well. So there have been times that we've just basically convened an RC meeting here at my house when they've come to visit me.
Mm-hmm.
They'll fly in from around the country, and I think it's a pretty well-known story now that both of them flew in to take care of me when I had radiation treatment when I was first diagnosed with cancer.
Right.
And I mean, that's friendship, right?
Oh, absolutely.
They put their lives on hold, so seemed like the right thing to do to have an RC meeting while we were doing it. And we just Skyped Gavin in, and there we were. But yeah, I mean, to circle back around to your question,
right.
we're close enough to get things done,
mm-hmm.
and close enough to also be able to get the things that we want that might not necessarily be what they want.
Right. Well, and that was, with the some of the recent stuff, and, not to rehash anything, because I know you've talked about it ad nauseum, but, because my understanding is they really didn't talk to you guys about the whole Walking Dead thing, correct?
We knew about the cards. Like, when I was there, I worked for 2 months in Studio X
mm-hmm.
in R&D last year in October, November. And I saw the cards. Like, I saw the text of the cards.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see the art or anything, the mock-ups or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
The cards are fine.
Right.
Right? I was like, yeah, these cards are fine. Now, I can't, I'll confess that I don't remember if they were 100% then what they are now, but I know that the difference isn't so significant that
right.
it would have raised my hackles. So, but we saw the cards. They're fine. And I think I'm pretty sure we also knew that they were going to be some part of a special release, but that
right.
was about all until, it was too late. And then, until it was too late in the process to have anything to say about it.
Right. Well, and I think I forget who it was. I just watched the clip of you, and I forget who it was on Commander, the podcast you guys do, where you were talking about the accessibility
mm-hmm.
of the product, which I thought was really interesting. But I just thought the backlash that you guys received for that from the community was, in my opinion, a little bit unreasonable. Just because, from my perspective, I don't know that it's entirely your job to police those things.
Yeah, it's definitely not our job to try to shape WotC's business practices.
Right.
Right. We have to let them do that, and then if we, again, the process works. If we need to take action, then we still can.
Right.
And while we're sensitive to their business, we wouldn't be friends if we weren't sensitive to their business.
Right.
We also can't be slaves to their business. We can't be beholden to just their marketing or just the secondary market or whatever. So, look, there were a lot of people with The Walking Dead that said we should ban the cards to send a signal.
Right.
And that's not the way it works. That would have done a fat lot of nothing burger. And it would have created a tension that we don't need to create.
Right.
What needed to happen, and what has subsequently has happened, was getting into conversations with them to
mm-hmm.
make sure this kind of thing doesn't happen again.
Mm-hmm.
So solving those problems behind the scenes are a way better long-term solution. I mean, I get that it would have felt good to some people, right?
Right.
But we're not in the business of rolling up newspapers and smacking people across the nose with them. Right? We're grown-ups, and we're going to solve problems like grown-ups. And I would rather have a long-term solution that this kind of thing doesn't happen again, as opposed to the minute of sort of feel-good vindication that some people would get if we had made a needlessly aggressive response.
Right. Well, and you bring up the working behind the scenes thing, because I think it was Cobblepot who tweeted at you, and I remember you responding, because when we were talking about Lotus, Jeweled Lotus, and what you guys were thinking about it, and you said something along the lines of, I had some very choice words about it. And you clearly you do, and that's something you do a lot on the back end that not everybody sees.
Sure. And I'm not going to talk about it. There are privileged relationships that we have, and I'm not going to violate those privileged relationships. The reason we can get things done is that we've built relationships of trust, and act like adults when we're doing them.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not afraid to say that when they get something wrong, or I think that they've done something that is contrary to the health of the format, I'm going to tell them in no uncertain terms.
Right. No, and that's one of the things I really appreciate about not only you, but the RC in general, is I have never had in question whether or not your intent for the format and your goals for it are not good. That's never been something I've questioned. And before we move on, I'll just say the one thing with The Walking Dead that I remember I thought when they announced it that I thought was the strangest thing is I was just like, man, I haven't thought about The Walking Dead in like 6 years. I was genuinely just like, oh yeah, I guess that's a thing still.
It's apparently a big thing still. Like a bunch of the top cable shows are Walking Dead things. And I mean, I'll be honest, the RC's knowledge of the Walking Dead came about a week from before the release of the cards. Because, we're obviously all, culturally aware people.
Right.
It was just thing that none of us had followed. Right. So it was like, okay, yeah, I get it, Walking Dead. I remember when it first came on, and I was about to start watching it, and then season 2 hit, and a bunch of friends were like, season 2 really sucks. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's my whole thing with Walking Dead was I worked at GameStop when that all first came out, and that was right when that wave of all that post-apocalyptic stuff was all just flooding the market. There was video games, TV shows, movies, all of that was all coming out right on top of each other. And I was just so burnt out on all of it so fast that to this day, anything zombie related, I'm just kind of I'm good.
Yeah.
But unless it's magic. So moving on. So we talked a little bit about bands, and one of the things I definitely wanted to talk about with that is, so when you and the rest of the RC sit down and you're talking about bands, what are the things that you all consider for bannings or not bannings, or banning particular cards?
Well, the philosophy is pretty clear, right? That we want to maintain a very healthy, interactive format that provides a resonant experience for a broad player base. And when something threatens that, that's when we think about banning it. I mean, Prophet of Crucifix and Paradox Engine are the obvious two examples. Once games start to devolve into nothing but these cards, then they become problematic. Then we really want to think about them hard. Or in our estimation, if a card no longer fits that model, like Kakusho, when we banned Kakusho, it was a scourge. It really was. It was everything was about Kakusho, copying it, cloning it, stealing it, whatever. And the game evolved to the point where Graveyard hate was better, creatures got better, interaction got better. So, we let it off the leash, and as you see, Kakusho is just a card.
Right.
It's good. It's fine. It'll win games, but it's not gonna be the laser point that happens when it hits the table like it was 15 years ago.
Right. And so when you talked about because earlier this year there was the big uproar over Flash, right?
Mm-hmm. And so year? Seemed like a million years ago.
I know I feel like we've had enough happen in the year 2020 that we could fill out like a decade, right? At some point I kind of remember, all of this has been going on during a pandemic. So, but when you talk about that, because there were two sides to the camp, right? With the bannings or not bannings, and even two sides within the banning camp, right? Where you had one side that was saying you need to ban Thassa's Oracle, and you had another side that was like, no, you got to ban Flash. What was it that it ultimately came down to, and who were the voices that really made that sort of thing happen?
Well, so earlier mid 2019, I started having chats with a bunch of well-known CDH personalities.
Mm-hmm.
Jim, Siggy, Lurker, Cobble, that whole crew.
Right.
So I just it's like, talk to me. Tell me where you are. I want to understand what your concerns are, what your pains are, what your pleasures are. Where are you? And I just kept going back to them as a resource and talking and talking and talking. And it was a very long discussion about the level of pain that this card was bringing, and the fact that this group could really articulate themselves well without devolving into some of the things that you see on the internet.
Right.
That they recognize the fact that we were there having, again, adult conversations about things.
Right.
That we honestly wanted to see what was going on. We wanted to, if they were having pain, we wanted to understand, where they were feeling it and how, and what the solutions would be. And it was a long process from the time we first started talking about it to the end, because, well, the problem is that Flash didn't really fit the criteria for banning.
Right.
It wasn't wrecking tables across the world. It was wrecking tables across a very small subset of tables across the world. But at a certain point, when your friend is hurting and you can do something to alleviate the pain and it's not going to hurt anybody else, then you do it. And that's sort of where we came to.
Mm-hmm. And I got to tell you, so knowing that you guys were having these conversations all the way back in 2019, you are having all of this. I mean, let's be honest, the CDH community has not always been not always had great good faith arguments. Right. And
well, that's why you talk to, that's why you talk to articulate representatives,
right?
As opposed to you don't talk to mobs. Mobs, there's nowhere good to go with a mob. There's no perfect thing to say to calm them down. There's no point that you're going to make that's so clever that they're going to forget their anger or fear or frustration. They're just going to continue to be a mob. So trying to engage that is a path to madness.
Right.
But engaging with people who have voices that can then speak to those crowds, it's a series of message filtering at a certain point.
Right.
And you talk to people who can talk to people. And, one of the things that I really, really, really wanted to do was, especially as we got to the point, we were getting to the point where, I had long retired from judging. Toby was kind of actively judging at high levels, but not much.
Mm-hmm.
Scott was still going, obviously, doing his job.
Right.
Gavin wasn't really going. So we weren't getting out as much as we wanted to. Before, when we were all active, whether it was me as a judge or me on a coverage team,
mm-hmm.
we were constantly at events. I think the last year that I worked, I was at 18 GPs or Pro Tours.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was a year. So we were out. And one of the things that, again, I wanted to start doing was really talking about our outreach, about finding our way to talk to more and more people. Because I know one of the criticisms for a long time had been that we were this sort of ivory tower group, that we weren't in touch with the player base, that we were just sort of random people at a great distance, just doing things that we wanted because. And it became more and more clear that what we needed to do was simply talk to more people, was get ourselves involved with more and more people. And the internet is really good for that.
Right.
Because you can interact with a lot more people. I mean, I can go to a command fest, and if there are 1,500 people there, I can't interact with all 1,500 of them.
Right.
Right. But in Discord groups and in forums and stuff, we can. We have that kind of outreach. So we had started launching plans in the middle of 2019 to really increase our outreach. And I think the COVID thing just accelerated some of the things we were already going to do anyway. Website redesign, like we're like, yeah, that website really needs a redesign. We got to get the forums and blah blah blah. And then at a certain point, it was just stop. This is what we're doing now. If we need to put resources behind it, we're going to do it. Just get it done. So, obviously the first move in the outreach was the Commander Advisor Group. Right. And that was, it was a moment of inspiration. And it happened here at the house when Scott and Toby were visiting, and I just said it. It came out of my mouth. It didn't even, I don't even know if it was a conscious thought yet. The idea just came out of my mouth, and the two of them looked at me, and it was one of those moments like, how the hell did we not think of this before?
Those are the best thoughts.
It was just, well, shit. So, and it took less than a month to form the CAG from that point. Right.
I'll tell you, if you ever consider him to be on the CAG, I tell you what, I cannot advocate for Jim enough. He is one of my favorite people in the ADH community.
Jim is one of the best minds and best hearts there are in Magic.
Yeah. I am part of their Discord group, and it is just the most positive place to be on the internet, in my opinion. Yeah. I can't get enough of it.
Yeah.
But
100%,
no,
100% agree with you.
Yeah. The CAG though has been really great. And honestly, I'm glad Shivam is part of it, but I also feel bad for it because somebody on Twitter decided one day that he was going to be the person that everybody went to whenever they're talking about the CAG.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, and I don't get it. Like, I mean, if you want to throw some hate at somebody, I don't get it being Shivam. Right? Right? He's yes. Between me and you, he occasionally lights himself on fire. But he's good and kind and giving. Right. And I like the the amount of negativity people want to put on him is so disproportionate to his personality.
Right. Well, and really anybody else on the CAG.
Yeah. Well, but he unfortunately has become like the lightning rod. And I don't get, like, look, if you want to spew some vitriol at somebody, point it at me, not Shiva.
Right? I don't know. I agree with that. You have enough going on. I pointed at something, but if I talked about this with Nathan Jones. He was on my show last week, and it is one we all kind of in our group of people have kind of all come to decide that if anybody really talks mad crap about like you, we're just like, no.
I appreciate that.
We don't really put up with that. I mean, and for me, I mean, my mom passed away from cancer, so I'm just very cognizant of the things that you were going through. And so I know you have enough going on, and I know your heart, just from hearing Jim talk and Cobblepot, and all those people talk. I know where you're coming from, and I don't really put up with those things, but I don't want to sound like I'm just, sitting here going, oh, now that I got you here. But I genuinely think that, because I just think some of the crap you guys get is unwarranted. And, as somebody who in years past has contributed to that, I am genuinely sorry.
Well, I think in a position like I'm in, you just have to realize that when somebody is spewing hate, it's not about you.
Right.
Right. Even if they think that a decision you have made is bad,
mm-hmm. them
expressing vitriol isn't really about you in the very, very least. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's a survival technique, and it's just, I mean, it's a good lesson to take into your life in all aspects. Generally, most of the things that happen, most of the things that other people do are never about you. They're always about them.
No, that's incredibly true. God, I could talk about that for hours. So, we've talked about bands some, and so maybe not, to put you in a weird position, but so there's a lot of cards on the ban list right now. Are there cards on there that are either being talked about coming off or you could see coming off? Obviously, Leovold is the number one, right?
Like Leovold is not coming off. I mean, I one time I said, if we did a Survivor type thing and voted things off of the ban list, Balance would be the last one, but probably not. Limited Resources would probably be the last one. That's miserable.
God, I actually wonder how that would work. That's interesting.
But the thing is, there are probably cards on the ban list that wouldn't hurt the format coming off.
Mm-hmm.
It also wouldn't help.
Mm-hmm.
Recurring Nightmare is probably not anywhere near as bad as it was back in the day, because like Husho, Graveyard Hate and Interaction is just better.
Right. But
Recurring Nightmare wouldn't create the kinds of games that we would like to promote. Right? Again, we want to promote interactive games, and it's a card that becomes not interactive. It's a card that one person plays solitaire with, and we want games where everybody's involved, where everybody feels. We know that somebody has to win a game of Commander.
Right.
But the best Commander game is where everybody does something and then somebody wins.
Right.
Everybody feels like they contributed to the narrative of the story that we're telling. A game of Commander is more like a game of D&D than it is a game of Standard.
Right.
Right. It is about this sort of story that we're shaping together. Mm-hmm. And like a card like Recurring Nightmare just seems like it doesn't contribute to that story very well.
Right.
Like Coalition Victory is probably not going to ruin a bunch of games, but it really is counter it now or lose. And that's kind of a deflating experience. And we'd rather promote more positive experiences.
Right. So with that being said, then I know you have already talked about like Lotus or Jeweled Lotus. I keep wanting to call it Lotus Petal. Um, Jeweled Lotus is coming out. Um, Personally, I don't think it's going to wreck the format. I think what it's going to do, specifically in CEDH, it's going to make turn order way more important, which I think is a downside. But overall, I don't think it's the end of the world. The card that I'm most concerned about really is Opposition Agent. And what are your thoughts on these new cards that are coming out?
I actually think Opposition Agent is the kind of card that the format needs.
Yeah.
I think that now I think Opposition Agent is pushed a little bit. Like it would have been playable at 4 mana,
right?
Or even black 1, but or even white 1. But
oh my gosh, we could get into that conversation.
Right. I think the big thing is that I think it's okay for new cards to come out and discourage things that people do too much of in the format already.
Mm-hmm.
And we see a few cards in Commander Legends that do that. Right. Opposition Agent is the anti-tutor card. There's some anti-ramp cards and anti-card draw cards. Hull Breacher is going to also call some people to the carpet.
Right.
Actually, we had it happen in the pre-release game.
Did you really?
Somebody went to draw 3 cards, and Rachel flashed in.
Oh gosh! Good grief!
But the real thing is that keeping things in check is a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Opposition Agent is going to lead to some real blowouts.
Right.
Right. And again, I think the mana cost is a little concerning.
Mm-hmm.
Like not badly concerning, but like I really feel much safer if it was 4.
I honestly, I said this on our show when we were doing our set review, because when I was talking with Cobblepot about it, I'm genuinely, with how pushed it is, genuinely surprised they didn't give it flying. Honestly, like.
Yeah, that would have been too much. And so I think Opposition Agent is actually a net benefit for the format, mm-hmm. because if it means that you're going to pay attention to not overcommitting to tutoring all the time,
mm-hmm.
then that's good. Right? Variance in the format is why there's a 100-card singleton format.
Right.
It's not 4 times 9 cards and 24 lanes.
Mm-hmm.
It's really about the variance, and tutoring obviously sort of wrecks that parity. And too much tutoring. A little tutoring is fine, but if it's just tutor for your pieces, do your thing. It's not a particularly interactive game. It's not a particularly compelling game. It's not a particularly interesting game. I'm a big believer in making your brain do the work, not your cards.
Mm-hmm.
And tutoring lets your cards do the work.
Right.
As far as Lotus goes, I think I'm actually more on the side of it's slightly more dangerous.
Right.
Than most people think, because it's not what the card does.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what the card does in the context of a game.
Mm-hmm.
It's what the card does in context to the format.
Right.
And the format is already getting too fast for my taste.
Mm-hmm.
Even in casual games, it's getting the number of turns is ticking down, and I don't think that's a healthy place to go.
I've noticed that too. I mean, even looking at the what was it, the survey you guys did a few months ago, just looking at the average power level of people who took that survey, I mean, it just feels like it keeps creeping up.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that again, it's not what your deck does; it's when it does it that is that's the real crux of this biscuit. That the thing that happens on turn 13 is fun. Whatever happens, whatever complete insanity happens on turn 13 is fine. The same thing happening on turn 3 is boring.
Right.
So Jeweled Lotus does nothing except make it fast, make things faster.
Right.
And well, it's not broken because you can only cast your commander. Well, yeah, there are commanders that will take over the game if you drop them on turn 1.
May I introduce you to Urza?
Urza or Grand Arbiter.
Grand Arbiter's the one that concerns me the most, actually, because I mean, a turn 1 Grand Arbiter is hard to come back from.
Yeah, card's miserable.
Yeah,
card's miserable before Jeweled Lotus.
Right.
So, again, we want people playing Magic, not people not playing Magic.
Right.
So we're going to keep it. Jeweled Lotus is a card we're definitely keeping an eye on. There's no, and I've said this in multiple tweets and Facebooks and wherever else that I've had my voice. If you're gonna go on the secondary market and get Jeweled Lotus at a premium price, beware. Please beware.
I do not understand how this card was pre-selling for $200.
FOMO.
Yeah. I'm just gonna crack packs until I get it. I think I have like 3 or 4 boxes pre-ordered, and I love cracking packs. I might keep one to do a draft with. I remember it was about 2 years ago. I was at my LGS, and I remember sitting there, and we were having this discussion about partners and the issues partners presented to the format of where it kind of homogenizes everything. And mind you, this is before Kenrith, and this is before Najeela. So we haven't even gotten the really homogenizing commanders yet, right?
Right.
And I remember saying, I was like, I mean, you can fix your reprint issue and you can fix your homogenization issue if you do a draft commander set. First of all, I think that'd be a blast to draft a commander set. Second of all, you would have to print partners in order to make that work, because how else do you get your color pairings? Because you only have so many cards, right?
Right.
And about like 12 months later, I'm watching announcements and Commander Legends pops up, and I was like, am I a prophet? Clearly somebody else had the same idea.
It's been in the works for about 6 years.
I believe it.
And some of the problems that you point out, like fixing your commanders, your color identity, is something that has been a big topic of conversation. I happened to be out there in September of 2017, I think. And or was that 18? Man, time has no meaning anymore. And I happened to be out there in Seattle on vacation. I wasn't out there for business. And they called me up and said, "Hey, why don't you come by the office one day?" And I got to draft and see some of the first cards from the. So I guess it had to be 2018 from the set. And then when I was there last year, when I was working there, I obviously got my dirty little hands in the file and checked out the set. I didn't work on the set, but I play tested with the set a couple of times.
Okay, so I have to ask you this then. So was Rograk? Do they know how busted Rograk is?
I don't remember that from back then. I think that was a late development card.
I do not think they realize how bananas that card is. Like that card, everybody saw it spoiled, and I remember sitting there looking at it, and I was like, okay, it's a 0/1 with all these things. That's kind of weird. And then the light bulb clicked on, and I was like, oh, this is turns my Mox Amber on turn 1. This makes Springleaf Drum better. This makes Culling of the Week absurd. It makes all the free spells absurd. I was just like, holy cow.
Yeah. The free spells are the ones that I'm like, hey, but it's red, man. Give red a break.
The free spells crack me up, especially with Kark, though, because even if you lose the flip, you can still just recast them.
Right.
I love this set so much. I'm so excited about it. And so one of the things that they've done over the years, and we're seeing it in this set, is Planeswalkers as commanders. And I really like that there are Planeswalkers with partner, but that's its own other thing. Mm-hmm. So I know you've heard this a ton, is why aren't Planeswalkers able to be commanders? What is it that you guys think on that? And, I'm sure you've answered this a ton, but just for my ears, like, where is that?
The big thing is that Planeswalkers as commanders, if we were just blanket all Planeswalkers as commanders, we'd probably have to ban about a dozen of them.
Mm-hmm.
And they significantly changed the play pattern of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The format wasn't, they weren't around when the format was conceived.
Right.
And to make them into the sort of same kind of marquee cards that legendary creatures are, which mm-hmm. are designed and play tested for what they are. Every legendary creature is passed through the lens of Commander, whether it's for a Commander set or not.
Right.
Right. I'm sure you've probably heard me say every set is a Commander set.
Right.
But Planeswalkers, just the legion of Planeswalkers that we have, were never looked at in that light. So they're not designed, balanced, or sort of meant for that role. And mm-hmm. I think that it would be an unhealthy disruption to the play patterns of the game if Planeswalkers were commanders.
Okay.
And we're like, the RC is unanimous on that.
Okay. No, I've always wanted to, because I don't think I've ever heard you say that, or really asked anybody about that. I've always wondered that. So, you talk about the play patterns and things like that. And do
you want Narset coming out of the command zone?
I don't want Oko coming out of the command zone. What are you talking about? Oko is perfectly fine in the 99. I don't need that to be a reoccurring thing.
Sorry, I interrupted a question.
Oh, no. You're fine. I mean, you'd have to ban Narset, right? Like, you banned Leovold.
Absolutely.
Like, Narset's the same thing.
Narset, first one on the chopping block.
The few that come to mind immediately is it's like the original Sauron, I would assume, would be on that list, and then Narset for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we kind of touched on this a little bit ago with how the game is speeding up and all of that. And I know you talk with WotC, but as far as the direction that WotC seems to be taking Commander in with their design, what are your feelings on it?
Well, I think for the most part, they're getting it right.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the Commander Legends especially, I mean, look at the converted mana costs of a lot of the cards in Commander Legends.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we've talked about a couple that we think are pushed, but for the most part, they're pretty expensive.
Right.
I just finished this morning. I finished writing my set review, and I was thinking about that very thing. That, man, there are a lot of cards here that are just spendy, and I think that's good, right? I think that we want things that cost 6 and 7. Everything doesn't need to be tightly efficient 2 and 3 and 4 mana cards.
Mm-hmm.
We want things that are narrow as opposed to broad. Things that make you work to get value out of them instead of just being value.
Right.
Shoe lane is just value, and you don't have to think to get value out of Tulane. You don't have
Right.
to work to get it. You don't have to think or work to get value out of Tachyova. It's rewarding you extra for doing the thing that you were doing already.
Right.
And I think that the design philosophy needs to push players into doing the things that they weren't otherwise going to do.
Right.
To do something new, to do something different. And I think for the most part, Commander Legends has captured that.
Mm-hmm. The only gripe I think I have with Commander Legends is I feel like white kind of is underwhelming. I think the card that really comes to mind for me is Armored Skyguard. The three colorless and a white that it has flying, and when it attacks, you search an aura or enchantment and you attach it when you put it in.
Yep.
That card to me,
Sky Hunter, right?
Yeah.
Sky Hunter.
Yeah. That card to me is an example of how if they just template it like Sun Titan, it's perfect, right? You give it the Uro ability where it ETBs or attacks and it triggers the thing. Because at 4 mana and you have to wait a turn, that's, it's a good effect. But as far as white goes, I mean, white didn't really get any standout cards.
Oh, I like the Archive of Coronation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty sweet.
We got a new Swords to Plowshares art, man.
When you give and Akroma's Will, I think Akroma's Will is a sweet spell.
Right. There are some good ones, but I felt like red was just absurd in this set.
Well, finally, right? Finally let red get its due.
Red this year has got such a shot in the arm.
Well, it needed it.
Yeah. So, talking about white, I swear this will be my last rulesy question,
sure.
And then we'll move on and I'll let you go. So, there is a card that came out earlier this year that specifically impacts cards in the command zone of Dranith Magistrate.
Mm-hmm.
For you, is that a card that hits any warning signs for you?
No.
Okay.
It sees play. I think maybe at high-powered tables, it probably has a bigger impact.
Right.
But I mean, I never want to be Dies the Removal guy, but
please be Dies to Removal guy. I am Dies to Removal guy.
We had it. I had it in my Boxing League deck, and there were a couple of games where I dropped it on turn 2, and it changed the way the other players had to play the game.
Right.
But it didn't dominate the game.
Right.
And I think it's fine. It actually doesn't set off any warning signs. If it was hex proof, maybe right? Jeez. Or it had a 5 toughness or something, it would be a little problematic. But as it stands, I think it's fine.
Okay. Well, I know I got to let you go, but there's 2 questions I want to know, and these are fun questions, before I let you go. So the first one is, of all the commander decks that you've ever built, you've built a lot, so I'm sure that there's several, but if you had to pick one commander deck that's your favorite you've ever built, what would it be?
That would be my You Did This to Yourself deck.
Okay. What is that?
It's Jeskai colors.
Okay.
It was built around it. The seed of the idea started with a single card, Paraelectric Feedback.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look that card up.
And Paraelectric Feedback deals damage equal to the mana cost of a spell. It's an instant, so it deals its CMC to the caster. Okay. And when I built this deck, the big thing to do was Cabal Coffer's like, the big thing to do at the shop at the time, like games would just devolve into waiting for somebody to exsanguinate for 50.
Oh my gosh.
So I saw a card. As a matter of fact, it was Todd Palmer, who's one of my Monday Night Gamers and a very good friend who happened to be working at the shop at the time, called me over and said, "Have you seen this card?" And it's from Guild Pact, I think.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Have you seen this card before?" I'm like, "Yeah." Oh. He's like, "Yeah." So the idea of you did this to yourself is the deck can't do anything bad to you unless you're trying to do something broken.
Okay.
Then it's like judo, right? It'll flip you for real. It has cards like Deflecting Palm, Mirror Strike, Reflect Damage.
Would like Arcbound be in there?
Comeuppance. Arcbound could be. It's not.
Okay.
So it basically, and the commander is Ruhan of the Fomori, because Ruhan makes the least. I said, okay, I built a deck, and then I said, what commander makes the least sense to put at the head of this deck? And Ruhan was it.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So the deck is on Architect, and it's you can search on me and find it, and it's certainly or you can read 3 different articles I've written in the last 8 years on the deck.
Right.
But it's just there. It'll gain some life sometimes. One of the finishing moves is Acidic Soil.
Okay.
If you've ramped out to 20 lands, then Acidic Soil is going to wreck you.
So you're talking like the type of goofy, like if I'm going to play casual, this is the type of deck I'd want to play.
Yeah. This deck has provided so many laughs.
Yeah.
And so many just crazy experiences over the years. I have to take it to every show I go to.
That's fantastic. I think like the craziest deck I've ever built that wasn't a command or competitive deck, right? Was one of the first decks I ever built was a Grimgrin mill deck. And the whole goal of the deck was to make this horde of zombies that would mill you by using Undead Alchemist.
Yeah, sure.
And I would never win games with it, but I just thought it was hilarious to attack at people and like mill 50 cards on everybody and get like this horde of zombies. I thought it was a blast.
Gavin Duggan, other RC member, has a Zodic Lord of Secrets deck.
Ooh.
And it basically does the same thing. When it hits you, it's like Undead Alchemist. When it hits you, you mill instead of, but it also it increases its power and toughness. Right. So, we played games where he's hit somebody, it's like mill 180 cards.
Oh my gosh. Well, the card that surprised me, even in competitive, that just blew me away was Paco from this year's commander set. Because at first I was like, this is whatever. And then I was playing it against Braden from CDH Cast. And I was like, this looks dumb. And then he hit me with it. And then I saw what it does. And I was like, oh boy, this gets bad fast. Yeah,
I built what I thought was a somewhat casual Paco and Halvan deck. And we were like turn 5 or 6, and the other 3 were like, kind of nonsense is this?
Well, you look at the card at first, you're like, whatever, and then you play with it, and you're like, oh dear.
Yeah.
So last question I'll ask you is, of all the sets that you've played in, what is your favorite set? It could be a regular set or a commander set. What was your favorite set for commander?
Oof.
I know.
Man. That would, let me think real fast. I mean, I could be It'd be techie and say invasion, but that's not a real answer. I probably. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of what of the 55 or 56 decks that I have.
Mm-hmm.
What set I have the most cards out of.
Okay.
Not just like, I have one card from Innistrad in every deck, but like what decks I have the most cards out of. And I think I have a lot of Ravnica cards, original Ravnica. Certainly Ravnica block. So,
right.
And Shadowmoor or Lorwyn block.
Okay.
I think I play a lot of cards from.
Okay. I that's one of my favorite questions to ask people. Because I know, like, depending on who you ask, they'll say Commander 16 or whatever. And, and for me, I always love anything Theros. Part of that is me being nostalgic. Because that was when when I first got into Commander and by extension Magic was when Theros came out. And I will, to this day, I love playing Phoenix and things like that. And I love all those cards.
Yeah, I appreciate them as well. And I have to stop myself when I build a new deck from jamming a god or two into it. You'll probably find this interesting then that I'm doing with Rachel Weeks and Dan Sheehan from Commander Sphere podcast.
Yeah.
And their friend comedian Mike Carrazza. I'm doing a limited D&D miniseries set in Theros.
I am so here for that. I bought the Theros D&D book the day it came out.
We're gonna record next week, I think. Actually, we're gonna record in 2 sessions next week, and then it'll air in December. And the conceit of the show, the conceit of the mini series, it's not really a campaign; it's a mini series. Is that the characters are the champions of a very small, not particularly well-known god.
Okay.
We wake up after an adventure, and we're the only 3 people in the world that remember the god.
Huh.
So that's basically basic. Dan is running the game, and that's basically what he gave us. And the god is sort of the god of chill. It's like the god of medium. Like, so
is it like Dionysius then?
It's but it's not, it's not so it's not so party heavy as Dionysius.
Okay.
It's more vibe. Like Spicoli would be a cleric.
Okay.
Like Rachel's playing a satyr who just thinks that her fellow satyrs just party too much. And I'm playing. I don't remember what Mike is playing. I'm playing a paladin who is just like, we all need to chill. And instead of the divine sense, we've modified that to detect vibe. So I can know when I can.
You guys got to do vibe checks.
Yeah, when somebody's vibe is, I can know when somebody's vibe off. Some vibe is off and try to get them. I mean, these are 3 professional comedians that I'm playing this game with, right?
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
It's gonna be hilarious.
That sounds so wonderful.
Look for that coming up in December.
Absolutely. Well, Sheldon, I know you've had a long day, and I know you've got a lot going on, so I really appreciate you taking time out to record this with me, and I appreciate everything you do for the game and for the format. So thank you so much.
It's my distinct pleasure. I'm happy to always come on, You get me talking about Commander, and you might never get me to stop.
Same. That's why I host a podcast.
Right.
My fiance got sick of listening to me. So, all right. Well, with that, I'm Callahan. We'll see you next time, and we've got more great content lined up for you. So this has been the Mind Sculptors. See you next time.